Recently, I finished Dead Space 3. While I enjoyed the game, I do feel it had underperformed. To unravel the mystery of its failure, with regards to horror, we must shift our focus from DS3 to DS2. For in the second installment, it had laid the framework of Dead Space's 3's. That didn't sound right. Had laid the framework for the third game's inevitable backlash. Off the rip, Dead Space 2, you were thrusted into the story without explanation. While that isn't an issue for returning fans to the series, it does pose an issue, being that it expects you, the player, to fill in the gaps. Tells you nothing, kicking you straight into the action, of which there's a ton of it. And unlike in the original, it is handled in more of a Michael Bay sort of way. Big honking explosions. Whereas in Dead Space, you fight for your life to survive, motherfucker. In Dead Space 2, your goal is undefined, man. Why is Isaac fighting? You seem to fill the role of an exterminator. And with regards to the trials faced in Dead Space 1, Isaac seems unbothered. Sure, they dump cheap jump scares on you without relent, and pull the same tricks from the first game, but without the soul she once possessed. At the sake of doing a dad level pun, Dead Space 2 and beyond truly feel dead. It had, of course, built on the systems from the previous installment, however that just wasn't enough. The run and gun level of gameplay becomes samey to the point where you can predict with pinpoint accuracy where and when they will come. They are coming. They are hungry. And they are coming. And they are hungry. The whole affair feels cheap and uninspired. While most of the failings could be the fault of EA overstepping, it still warrants discussion. One thing I think is truly amazing, the setting in each of the games. Dead Space 1, you're on a ship. Where do they put you in Dead Space 2? They build on that. You're on a space station. Where do they put you in Dead Space 3? You're in space. Then you go from space to a frozen moon. The settings in those games are just great. And they never reuse one. They never do. They always build up on it. Always build. I think that's fantastic. The story itself, I feel, across the board isn't an issue. The problem is the execution. In each instance, Isaac's reaction makes sense. I really, really like that. He's not some stupid horror game protagonist. His actions are logical. This whole can of worms could have been averted had Dead Space 2 flopped, but the masses, me included, accepted the run and gun level of gameplay without a second thought. Minus the ending, which outstays its welcome by a stretch, I would say it is a great game. But in relation to its predecessor, it is leagues behind. And it's only through its success that it allowed the birth of Dead Space 3, which I stand by my statement that it is a fantastic game, but a horror game it is not. There is a twist at the end of Dead Space 3, which feels like a better successor to Dead Space 1, and the DLC, while not nearly staying as long as I would have liked, is what Dead Space 2 should have been. that DLC haunted me, and it wasn't until the DLC and the end of the game that I felt a shred of fear. The issue, I truly feel, is that they saved the best for last, while also not leaning heavily enough into the horror. That is what Dead Space should have been. While there are folks up in arms about the ending of the DLC, Awakened, I think we all can agree that if Dead Space 3 had the same heart throughout the entire game, it would have been phenomenal. It would have been just great. We could even go a step further. Imagine if Dead Space 2 was made in that same way, steeped in cosmic horror, as is the tail end of Dead Space 3, which was built on from Dead Space 1. I don't know. Those are my thoughts. As always, you guys take care. I will be always here. You will be always listening. Good stuff. Good stuff.